Hey, English learners. Welcome back to the Speak English with John channel podcast, your cozy place to learn easy English through real conversations. I'm Emma.
And I'm John. Emma, can I say something slightly dramatic before we start?
I feel like the answer is no, John, but I know you're going to say it anyway.
Fair. I was just thinking, should people follow their dreams, or be practical?
Oof. Yeah. That gets complicated very quickly.
Exactly, because the first answer people usually give is, follow your dreams, of course.
Right. It sounds brave. It sounds inspiring. It sounds like the kind of advice people want to believe.
Yeah, it sounds good when you say it out loud.
But real life makes that question harder. Because real life is also money, timing, responsibility, fear, family pressure, all of that.
One part of you wants the life you really want, and the other part is quietly asking, okay, but how is this actually going to work?
Yes. That is the part people do not always say out loud.
And that is why this topic feels so real. I think a lot of people live between those two voices.
Yes. One voice says, be careful, be sensible, do the practical thing.
And the other says, but what about the life you actually want?
Oof. And that voice does not always go away.
No, it really does not.
Even when life looks fine from the outside, I think a lot of people still carry that quiet question inside. Am I living the life I chose, or just the life I ended up in?
And that is where this gets personal.
So in today's episode, we are talking about dreams, fear, practicality, and how to stay honest with yourself without losing touch with real life.
We are also asking a deeper question. How do you move toward what matters to you, while still living responsibly in the real world?
And we're doing all of that in B2 level English, so the language may be a little richer, but it will still feel natural, clear, and comfortable to follow.
So please do not worry if you do not catch every single word. Just stay with us, follow the feeling, and let your English grow naturally as you listen.
And later in the episode, we'll also have a word tour where we explain some useful words and expressions from today's conversation.
Yes, so stay with us for that too. And if you enjoy learning English through honest, meaningful conversations like this, please like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and join the English Leap family.
And today, we would really love to hear from you. Tell us which part of the world you are listening from. We always love seeing all the different places this little English Leap family reaches.
And also let us know in the comments. Do you feel like you are living your dream life, or quietly living a life shaped by someone else's expectations?
You can keep your answer short, or share a little of your own experience in the comments. We always love reading what you think.
Because sometimes one honest comment helps someone else feel a little less alone.
Alright.
Let's begin.
Okay, we should talk the dream you had before life became serious. You know, John, I think most of us had some kind of aspiration before life became serious.
Yeah, definitely. An aspiration just means a strong hope or ambition, something you really want for your life.
And that is why this topic feels personal so quickly. When people hear dream, they often imagine something huge and dramatic, but real dreams are usually much quieter than that.
Oof, that part feels very real to me. A lot of people are not chasing some dramatic fantasy. They just want a life that feels more like their own.
Exactly. Maybe they want freedom. Maybe they want work that means something. Maybe they want a calmer life. Maybe they just want to wake up without feeling heavy every morning.
And that version of the dream feels much more honest. It is less about looking impressive and more about feeling right inside your own life.
Yes, and I think many people still remember that younger version of themselves, the one who wanted something clearly before life got crowded.
Before practicality entered the room like a very serious manager who was not invited but somehow took over the meeting anyway.
Exactly. And honestly, I do not think adulthood always kills the dream. I think it just pushes it into the background.
Yeah, that feels more accurate. It is not always gone. It is just harder to hear.
For me, it feels like a window in a room. The window is still there, and the light is still coming through, but over the years too many things get stacked in front of it.
Responsibilities, fear, tiredness, expectations, other people's opinions, all those boxes pile up. And one day you almost forget there was ever a window there at all.
Yes. And that is the sad part. The dream is not always gone. It is just no longer the loudest thing in your life.
And then it returns in those strange, ordinary moments. You are driving somewhere, or lying awake at night, and suddenly that old part of you quietly taps you on the shoulder.
It shows up in the middle of a normal day and says, "Hi. I am still here, by the way."
Yes, and then you are unexpectedly having an emotional moment in a supermarket parking lot.
Honestly, the timing is always so disrespectful.
It really is. But I think that says something important. A lot of people are not empty. They are just disconnected from a part of themselves they once understood very clearly.
That is beautifully said, and I think that might be the first truth of this whole episode.
Right. So if that dream is still quietly there, then what changes? What makes people slowly move away from it?
Okay, we move to next topic 2. How safety slowly becomes more attractive than truth. Ah, yes. That is where this starts to feel very real.
Exactly. Most people do not give up on a dream in one big dramatic moment.
No, not at all. It usually happens slowly.
Yeah. Life gets expensive. You get tired. You become more careful. Other people start depending on you, and suddenly safety starts looking very attractive.
Because safety can feel like relief. It can feel like protection.
True. And that is where apprehension comes in. Apprehension means a quiet feeling of fear or worry about what might happen.
Right. It is that voice that says, what if this goes badly? What if I lose stability? What if I try and it does not work?
And the hard part is that those fears are not always silly. Some of them are very real.
Exactly. Bills are real. Family pressure is real. Responsibility is real. That is why simple advice like just jump does not work for everyone.
Yeah. Some advice sounds like it has never paid rent in its life.
Exactly. Follow your heart. Okay, lovely. My landlord also has opinions.
And somehow those opinions are always very practical.
Very practical. Very consistent.
But still, once life becomes all about avoiding discomfort, you stop asking what is true for you. You only ask what feels less risky.
Yes, and those are two very different questions.
Right. Safety says, stay here. Keep things predictable. But over time, that short-term comfort can create a deeper discomfort.
Yes. Your life may look normal on the outside, but inside something feels slightly off.
It is like wearing shoes that fit, but never feel comfortable.
Yes, that is exactly the feeling.
And once you start feeling that disconnect, a harder question shows up. Are you actually making wise choices, or are you slowly letting fear shape more of your life than you realize?
Right. And that is exactly why this part feels tricky, because sometimes being practical really is wisdom, but other times, it is fear in a very respectable outfit.
See, that is the uncomfortable part. From the outside, those two things can look almost the same.
Exactly. Because people rarely say, I'm scared. They usually say, I'm just being realistic.
And sometimes that is true. Sometimes caution is maturity. Sometimes waiting is smart.
Yes. The problem is not that people sometimes play it safe.
And play it safe means choosing the safer option to avoid risk or trouble.
Yes, there is nothing automatically wrong with that. The problem begins when someone plays it so often that they start calling it their personality.
That really happens, though. Some people say, I'm just not that kind of person, when really they have just become extremely used to avoiding discomfort.
Yes, fear can become so familiar that it starts to sound wise.
Very wise, actually. Fear has spreadsheets. Fear has a calendar. Fear has 12 very organized reasons why this is not the right time.
Yes, exactly. And the annoying thing is, some of those reasons sound very sensible.
Which is why honesty matters. The real question is not just, am I being practical? The real question is, am I being wise, or am I mainly protecting myself from discomfort?
Yes, because wisdom usually feels steady. Fear feels tighter than that.
Yeah, fear makes your life smaller.
Oof, that is such a simple sentence, but it says a lot.
And I think a lot of people know that feeling. They are not really building a life they love. They are building a life that helps them feel less exposed.
Yes, and those two things are really not the same.
But at the same time, I think this next part is important too. We should be careful not to make every pause sound like failure.
Yes, that matters a lot.
Because I do not want this episode to sound like, if you do not quit your job tomorrow, you are failing at life.
Yes, please, let us stay calm.
Very calm. No dramatic resignations after one podcast episode.
Please, we are not responsible for that.
Because sometimes restraint is healthy.
Right. And restraint means controlling yourself and not acting too quickly.
Exactly. Restraint is not weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom. It is that inner voice saying, I do want change, but I do not want to make a messy decision just because I feel emotional today.
Yes, because not every bold move is brave. Sometimes what looks like courage is really just frustration, burnout, or a strong desire to escape.
That is very true. Running away from one life is not the same as building a better one.
Exactly. I remember a time in my own life when I felt very stuck, and because I felt trapped, every dramatic change started looking brilliant to me.
Yeah, I know that feeling. When you are exhausted, almost any change starts looking like the answer.
Yes, in my mind, big change automatically meant good change. But honestly, if I had acted from that mood, I probably would have made things worse.
And that is why restraint matters. Sometimes it is not saying, no, forever. Sometimes it is saying, not like this. Not from this mindset. Not without a plan.
Ah, yes, that is exactly it. Restraint can actually be a form of care.
And honestly, I think that is a more mature kind of courage.
Wow. John, that was actually very good.
Thank you. I try to be useful sometimes.
Very rare, but still appreciated.
That is fair.
But really, I think people need permission to move slowly, to save money, to test things, to learn quietly, to build in small ways.
Absolutely. Following a dream does not always mean turning your whole life upside down in one weekend.
Yes, thank you. That is exactly the point.
Real courage is often less dramatic than people think. Sometimes it looks like doing one small thing consistently for a long time.
And that kind of restraint can actually protect the dream instead of damaging it.
Yeah, but there is also a fine line between moving carefully and waiting too long.
Exactly. Because even with all that balance, I still think there comes a moment when something inside you says, okay, enough. I cannot keep delaying this forever.
Yeah, and I think that moment is usually quiet. It is not always dramatic. It is often just very honest.
Because some people stay in preparation mode for years.
Yes, they make beautiful plans. Color-coded plans. Very impressive plans. Absolutely no movement, but wonderful plans.
Exactly. Gorgeous planning, zero action.
And that is where preparation can quietly turn into hiding.
Yes, and that is where conviction matters. Conviction means a strong inner belief that something is right for you or deeply important to you.
Right. It is that feeling that says, I do not know exactly how this will go, but I know this matters.
And I like that because conviction does not mean fear disappears.
Not at all. You can still be scared and have conviction.
Exactly. I think people often wait for fear to leave before they act.
And that can keep you waiting forever. Fear may stay in the car. It just should not be the one driving.
Exactly. Fear can sit in the back and complain.
I preferred the old route, actually.
This feels a little unstable. Thank you very much.
But really, that is the turning point. The moment fear stops being the boss.
Yes, and sometimes that is when people finally take the plunge.
Right. And take the plunge means finally doing something bold after hesitating for a long time.
Exactly. Not because everything is perfect. Not because they suddenly become fearless. But because staying the same starts hurting more than moving.
Oof. Yes. Waiting starts to feel heavier than trying.
And I think many people know that feeling.
I think so too. From the outside, nothing may look dramatic, but inside something becomes very clear.
Yes, you reach a point where you know you cannot keep ignoring that part of yourself.
And once you stop ignoring it, another question starts to show up. If this part of you is so real, then whose life have you actually been living all this time?
Ah, yes, because that is where this gets even more personal.
I really think a lot of people are living lives they did not fully choose. In many ways, they inherited them.
Yes, they inherited ideas about success, stability, respectability, all of that.
From family, society, culture, comparison, fear. And then they spend years trying to become good at a life they never properly questioned.
That explains such a strange feeling, actually. Nobody says, please slowly abandon yourself. It just happens quietly.
Yes, it happens through messages like, this is what sensible people do. This is what successful people choose.
And before you know it, you start to follow in someone's footsteps.
Right. And follow in someone's footsteps means copying the path another person took, often family or society's version of success.
And sometimes that path is good for you, but sometimes it is just familiar and approved. That does not automatically mean it is truly yours.
And then a strange sadness can show up. Your life may look fine on paper, but inside you feel weirdly absent from it.
Oof. Yes. That is such a real feeling.
It is like everything is there, the schedule, the work, the responsibilities, but some deeper part of you is standing a little behind the whole thing.
Exactly. And that is often why people hold back.
Right. And hold back means stopping yourself from doing what you really want because of fear, doubt, or pressure.
Yes. You hold back your honesty, your curiosity, your energy, sometimes even your joy.
And that is why I think some people are not lazy at all. They are disconnected.
And those are two very different things.
That is why self-reflection matters here. Not to become dramatic but simply to ask, whose voice is shaping my choices right now?
Mine, my family's, society's, fears?
Exactly. Because there is a difference between guidance and inheritance.
What do you mean?
Guidance can help you grow, but inheritance, if you never question it, can quietly trap you.
Ah, yes. That is such a clear way to say it.
Yeah. And maybe that is what this whole conversation has been moving toward, not one extreme or the other.
Because maybe this is where we land. I do not think the answer is always, quit everything and chase the dream wildly. And I also do not think the answer is, be practical forever and silence yourself.
Yeah. Both extremes feel incomplete to me.
Exactly. Maybe the more honest goal is simply this, do not abandon the dream.
That sounds simple, but it carries a lot of weight. Because not everyone can change their whole life right now. Real life is real life.
Yes, some people have family pressure, money pressure, timing issues, responsibilities. That is real.
But there is still a big difference between moving slowly and giving up on yourself completely.
Right. And give up on means to stop believing in something or stop trying for it.
Exactly. Slow is not failure. Careful is not failure. Small steps are not failure.
Yes. What becomes dangerous is when you decide that deeper part of you does not matter anymore.
And that is why I like the word loyalty here.
Loyalty?
Yeah, sometimes a dream does not need dramatic action. Sometimes it just needs loyalty, a quiet refusal to forget it completely.
Oof, that is beautiful. And even if you cannot make a huge move today, you can still work toward something meaningful.
Right, and work toward means making slow, steady progress toward a goal.
Exactly. You can learn, you can save, you can practice, you can ask better questions, you can make a little more space for what matters.
Yes, maybe the goal is not instant transformation. Maybe the goal is simply to stay connected to the dream.
That feels much more realistic and much kinder.
Yes, less movie scene, more actual life.
Exactly.
Maybe your dream changed. Maybe it became smaller on the outside, but deeper on the inside.
Yes, maybe now the dream is peace, or freedom, or meaningful work, or creative space, or simply a life that feels like yours.
And that still counts. It counts deeply.
So maybe the real question is not, should I follow my dream or be practical?
Maybe the better question is, how do I stay loyal to what matters to me while still living responsibly in the real world?
Yes, that feels like the mature version of the question.
Dream and practicality do not have to be enemies.
No, they just need a better relationship.
And honestly, that feels like a good place to pause the discussion for a moment.
Yes. So now, let's slow things down a little and look at some of the key words and phrases we used in today's episode.
Because this topic gave us some really useful vocabulary, especially if you want to talk about dreams, fear, choice, and the kind of life that feels true to you.
So let's begin with a word we used near the start of the conversation, aspiration.
An aspiration is a strong hope or ambition, something you truly want for your life or future.
For example, her biggest aspiration is to build a life that feels calm and meaningful.
Or, many people have aspirations they quietly carry for years. Repeat, aspiration.
Aspiration. Next, an important word for this topic, apprehension.
Apprehension means a quiet feeling of fear or worry about what might happen.
For example, he felt a lot of apprehension before making a big life decision.
Or, apprehension often shows up when people want change but fear the risk. Repeat, apprehension.
Apprehension. Next, a very useful phrase, play it safe.
To play it safe means to choose the safer option in order to avoid risk or trouble.
For example, she wanted to try something new, but in the end she decided to play it safe.
Or, a lot of people play it safe for so long that they forget what they really want. Repeat, play it safe.
Play it safe. Next, a strong word for self-control, restraint.
Restraint means controlling yourself and not acting too quickly, especially when emotions are strong.
For example, he showed restraint and waited before making a major decision.
Or, sometimes restraint is not weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom. Repeat, restraint.
Restraint. Next, a very powerful word in this topic, conviction.
Conviction means a strong inner belief that something is right, true, or deeply important to you.
For example, she spoke with conviction about the kind of life she wanted.
Or, you do not need to feel fearless, but conviction helps you keep moving. Repeat, conviction.
Conviction. Next, a phrase many people know, but do not always use, take the plunge.
To take the plunge means to finally do something bold after hesitating about it for a long time.
For example, after years of thinking about it, he finally took the plunge and started his own project.
Or, sometimes people take the plunge when waiting starts to hurt more than trying. Repeat, take the plunge.
Take the plunge. Next, an idiom about copying another path, follow in someone's footsteps.
To follow in someone's footsteps means to copy the path another person took, often a parent, family member, or society's idea of success.
For example, he followed in his father's footsteps and entered the same profession.
Or, some people follow in someone else's footsteps before asking what they actually want. Repeat, follow in someone's footsteps.
Follow in someone's footsteps. Next, a very common phrasal verb, hold back.
To hold back means to stop yourself from doing or saying what you really want because of fear, doubt, or pressure.
For example, she wanted to speak honestly, but fear made her hold back.
Or, a lot of people hold back for so long that it becomes a habit. Repeat, hold back.
Hold back. Next, another important phrasal verb, give up on.
To give up on something means to stop believing in it or stop trying for it.
For example, he almost gave up on his dream after a few difficult years.
Or, moving slowly is not the same as giving up on yourself. Repeat, give up on.
Give up on. And finally, a hopeful phrase to end on, work toward.
To work towards something means to make slow, steady progress in the direction of a goal.
For example, she is working toward a life that feels more peaceful and more honest.
Or, even small steps matter when you are working towards something meaningful. Repeat, work toward.
Work toward. And those were today's Word Tour words and phrases.
Yes, and together, they really capture the heart of this episode. Dreams, fear, courage, pressure, and the slow work of building a life that feels true to you.
And honestly, even learning these words gives you a better way to talk about your own life.
Exactly. And maybe that is the real value of conversations like this. They do not just give us ideas, they also give us language for things we may have been feeling for a long time.
Yes, and sometimes when you finally have the right words, you can understand yourself a little more clearly.
And maybe that is a good place to leave this today. Not with pressure, and not with some huge dramatic answer, just with a quieter question.
What matters to you, and how can you stay connected to it a little more honestly?
Even if the step is small, even if the timing is not perfect, even if you are still figuring things out.
You do not need to have your whole life solved, but you do deserve to stay close to what feels true. This is Emma.
And this is John.
And you have been listening to the English Leap podcast. Bye.